Yo, what up, what up, what up, what up? It's your boy Black Zach. Listen, man, I've been in the kitchen cooking. So this episode is real special, man. You see the shirt, right? State of the Community. So what I've done with this episode, I've teamed up with Kyle Highlands and the Lyrics Institute, the Black Company, 5X Media, and the Kansas City Police Department to have a conversation about the state of our community, man. So listen, I want y'all to tap in, man. Sit back, relax, man. You know, rock with the Exactly My Point podcast and my people as we tap into something real special going on in Kansas City, man. Your boy. Peace. Yo, what's up, what's up, what's up? It's your boy Black Zach of the Exactly My Point podcast. And today I'm here with something special, the state of the community. So before we get into this, I have to first thank our audience for coming out and taking part of this. So we really appreciate you. From all of the companies and partners involved in this State of the Community address, we really appreciate you guys for coming out and supporting. All right, so the State of the Community, a lot of you are asking what exactly is this. Now, before we get into this, I would be so inappropriate if I didn't give my co-hosts up here a chance to introduce themselves. So we're gonna start right here from my right and give everybody your name and your affiliation.
My name is Titus Golden. I'm a local law enforcement officer here in the metropolitan area.
My name is Patrick Bird, and I'm a local law enforcement officer here in the area.
My name is Sergeant G. Herndon, and I'm also a local law enforcement official in this city.
My name is Deshaun, nickname the Coach, last name Burton. I'm representing the Way to Happiness program.
I'm Kyle Hollins. I thought you was gonna do your spill.
No.
I'm Kyle Hollins. I'm CEO and founder of the Lyrics Institution.
And I am Christina Williams. I am co-owner of the Black Company, where we connect outstanding men of color.
I'm Eric Williams, and I am part of the Black Company as well. I'm glad to be here.
Toriano Porter, opinion writer for the Kansas City Star newspaper.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for participating in this State of the Community. As you guys have seen, we have law enforcement and we have our community here to sit down and have a conversation that is needed, right? We're living in some treacherous times within our country, but we're also living in treacherous times within our community. So the purpose of the State of the Community address is to really sit down and not just become problem-based, but become solution-based, how we can change the narrative in our communities, all right? So before I get into this, you know, we kind of have some questions. The questions will be designed to interact with both the law enforcement and the community panel members. All right, so my first question is to Officer Bird or any officers on the panel. Could you speak to why you decided to become an officer of the law?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for being here. This is a subject matter that's very near and dear to my heart. I wrestled with this for so long, trying to have this open discussion because I just felt like there was a need for it. So I really appreciate everyone on the panel as well as in the audience. For as long as I can recall as a kid growing up in Memphis, Tennessee, I've always had that passion to become a law enforcement officer. I was fortunate enough to have a law enforcement officer live in my neighborhood. And under his tutelage, you know, he would allow me to sit in his car. He would give me a ride to school and things along those lines, and the passion just grew, that it fueled the fire. So from that point on, it was something that I just couldn't shake. At that time, that's when I realized this must be my calling. You know, this was the passion, this was my calling. It was something that I strived for even when I was in school, you know, to look what the requirements were to be a police officer. The character needed to become a police officer. Anything that I could do to better my chances of becoming a police officer, I did it. So it was always in me as a child to seek this profession out.
So it's a purpose-driven profession. Any other officers want to speak to that?
I've been an officer right now, I'm a sergeant right now, but I've been in law enforcement for over 21 years. I was a person that loved to watch the news. I was always up on current events. My hobby is history. I really, so I like current events and studying history. But watching the news every day, I saw so many problems in the world. And I really always saw people that talked a lot about the problems but didn't do too much about it. And I saw myself as an action-oriented person, so I wanted to be a person that got up off the couch, quit talking about something, and went out there and did something about some of the problems I saw in my community. I'm from the south side of Chicago. My parents, I had one here and one there, so I was in this city 3 months out of the year, and then I was in Chicago for 9 months out of the year. But it was both inner city upbringings, and I saw all those problems. And I hate when I see folks outside of my community, so to speak, trying to bring solutions. I don't see enough of my own community members. So I said, let me step up as a man, do what I'm supposed to do. And law enforcement was a perfect fit. And I also feel the same way it was a calling. It's almost like being called like a pastor or something. You almost feel ordained out there because it doesn't really make sense to do the job sometimes. It has to be a greater power that's getting us to do what we do. And I've been doing it since May of '99.
Would you like to speak to?
Yeah, so like for me, my upbringing for being a law enforcement officer is very different. It's just come from a lot of the bad run-ins with different officers growing up. Like I grew up here in Kansas City, Missouri, 3708 Bells, the heart of the city. So having older siblings, I'm the youngest on my mom and dad's side. So like having some brothers going in and out of prison, doing drugs and things like that, that was just the way of life of growing up. And so the run-ins that my brothers used to have, I used to be with them, and I always heard like how police officers would talk to my brothers and different things like that. And so when I was 16 years old, I got pulled over off 135th and State Line. And so when I got pulled over, these officers, it was a group of white officers. They pulled me over. They asked me what was I doing in this neighborhood. And I told them I'm actually leaving from my pastor's house on my way home in Raytown. And they said, well, you shouldn't be in these neck of the woods. You fit the description of a robbery suspect. So they got me out my car, put me on the hood of the car. And I'm like, sir, like my face is burning. Like it's hot outside. The motor, is burning. And they told me to be quiet. And so I'm like, sir, like I didn't do anything. And they was like, well, you robbed somebody. I'm like, I didn't rob anybody. And at that time, I was driving a 1989 Buick LeSabre. It was one of my brother's cars, and that was one of his drug dealer cars, and he gave it to me. I fixed it up now. It's a good car now. Little brother driving it. And so one of the officers looked at me, and I told him, I said, sir, I want to be a police officer one day. I feel like it's my calling. And of course, he said some profanity, but he said, you won't amount up to nothing in life, And so from that point on, I had this grudge, and I said, you know what, coming from the inner city, for especially a white officer to tell me something like that, like I'm not gonna be nothing, like I'm gonna prove you wrong. And so with that, I've been doing this job for 12 years now. The officer told me that, now I prove him wrong that I can do it. So that's pretty much my history.
Man, those are powerful testimonies, man. I appreciate those, man. Those are powerful testimonies. So my next question is actually for the community. So we got to hear how the officers have come into their purpose in the law enforcement thing, but I wanted to speak to the men on the panel per se. How have your experiences with police officers shaped your view of them? So I'll start with my gentleman right here on the end.
Man, growing up in South St. Louis in the 90s, I had a couple of incidents with police, but it wasn't anything major. I don't really have any kind of major interaction with the police, But what I do day to day is I hold police and other people accountable for what they do and their actions. The police department, the police officers, whether it's Jackson County, KC Mo, or anybody else. So with that comes a great deal of responsibility. So, that's kind of my interaction, or how I put my stamp on what's going on in the community. I just try to hold officers and the department accountable.
And as we all should, that's powerful within itself. Mr. Williams, could you speak to your experience?
What mine did is I own a barbershop. So in owning a barbershop, I ended up cutting different people that were policemen, sheriff, detectives, different things like that. So being my shop in the community, I also cut hair at the juvenile detention.
Right.
So that actually put me in the jail part of it and the part that the people to pick them up. But I had the mentality, like you said, growing up maybe in the 80s, the music said us against the police. But once they became to be my friends, or a guy I went to school with, I had a different thought about, hey, I want to see my boy tomorrow. Right. I want him to come to the shop. Most of the songs said, us against the police, us against the police. But it was like, this is my guy I grew up with. I don't want to hear something happen to my guy. So I had a different feel of, you know, us against the police. So it was like, okay, what if the police was your brother? You want him to come home. You don't want to hear if something happened to the policeman or your schoolmate. So I'm there to playing on the policeman basketball team. So my interaction wasn't bad.
Right.
I might say that I got in.
Okay.
Because I knew different ones, so I could drop names. I might say, oh, you know, Bird, oh, that's my guy. Oh, okay, so those type of deals had me in different spots. So mine hasn't been bad. I saw it work for me. One time, I went to my shop, and I stopped to put my seatbelt on to check or something. So, but I stopped in the alley of my shop, behind it. So when I came out, they pulled me over like, hey, you sitting in the back for a minute. I was like, and I had on something that said everything about my shop. And it was like, oh, I'm actually happy you pulled me over, because if I took something, you'd have called me. I own this shop. He was like, okay, well, have a good day. But I started work, and
Right.
so, I mean, I myself, I have no ill side to it. It's always been something that was on the inside of.
Right. Now, Kyle, you and I have had several interviews on camera, and your story is one that I think a lot of people our age can resonate with. So I know for you, your experiences may not have been one that a lot of people on this panel could resonate with. So could you speak to your experiences and how they've put you in a position to be right here on this panel?
Yeah, for sure. I should have went to law enforcement as many times I was down on looks. You know what I'm saying? As much time I spent on looks, I should have died. You know, I grew up in the 64130 area code. I grew up in the 50s. I mean, life is, you know, I sold dope, carried guns, did all that stuff, gangbang, all that. Left the 50s, went down to 27, stood on the corner of 27th and Prospect. That's where pretty much where, you know, my career was formed at. But being a person that hustled on the corner, there was police interaction every day. I think my PSI came back with like 196 police interactions in 1 year. So me and police, me and Bird, Bird patrolled that area, you know. So like me and Bird had many run-ins together. Bird's in my police reports, you know what I'm saying? So that's just. But my first, what kind of shifted me from believing that the police were for me was I had to be about a little younger than my oldest child. We were riding down Prospect. My dad had a Z22, man. It was a nice sports car. This was probably like early 90s. And he got stopped 3 times on Prospect from 57th to 63rd. Like literally 3 times by 6 different officers, 2 in each car. And they pulled him over for the exact same thing every single time. And my dad, he worked for Jackson County Jail. You know what I mean? He in my mind, that was a police officer, you know what I mean, in my mind, or a cop. And that's when I realized, like, it didn't matter if you were good or bad. Like, this is your life, right?
Right.
To fast forward till I was 14, I remember walking up the street and there was something that happened around the corner, and I had a pick in my pocket, and they stopped us. They jumped down, drew down on us, like pulled the gun out next to my head because of a pick in my pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
To where my mom and them, like the whole block, like, you know, when you grew up in the inner city, in that sphere, like the community is kind of tight at that point. I mean, the whole block was out trying to save 4 little black boys. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And for it to take a community to stop that, you know what I'm saying? Like, it shifted my mindset. And then the more you get into the game, it becomes a cycle. Now you got cops that, you know, they'll take your pack out. I mean, your drugs out and stomp them in the streets, and you got some that'll put some on you. You know what I mean? So then you just kind of get to that point to where it's like, it is what the rap song. It is true. You know what I mean? You get that philosophy, and then as I got older, then you start hearing about the killings. You know what I'm saying? Like when the police were killing black men. You know what I mean? And you start watching the documentaries, and then, you know, after so long and so much repetition, it's kind of solidified. It is us against them. So I'm not going to say that's where I'm at now, but I wouldn't serve a justice to say that isn't a reality for many blacks in the inner city.
Understandable. Very understandable. My next question, I want to transition back over to the officers. As a black police officer, what are some of the difficulties you face, not just in your department, but in your community?
Oh, like, well, for me, I can speak for myself. Like I said, just growing up in the inner city, it brings a lot of challenges because a lot of the community don't see you as that community dude no more. They just see you as a cop. So they just already just paralyzed the situation is you one of them. And so, like I had to explain to people so many times is that I'm still a black man no matter what. With this uniform on, without this uniform.
Right.
I'm still a target no matter what. I mean, there was, like I was telling Bird the other day, I mean, there's so many different situations that I went through. Just everywhere I go, one particular incident, I had my sons with me, two black boys, you know. And in their eyes, they don't question me about me being a police because they think that, you the police, so you get a free pass. And I'm like, nah, you don't get a free pass, son. So we went in the Coles. We was up north. We went in the Coles. I went in there 2 days in a row, and so the first day, I just felt this presence. These people just follow me around. I'm like, dang, like they just follow me around. And you know, I could hear them talking, but of course, being a cop, you understand the conversation that these people are having. So I just like, you know what? I'll come back the next day. You know, I don't like people following me. Come back the next day, have my sons with me. So I'm standing in line, and this lady was like, "Excuse me, sir, the line start back there. I don't know if you could read that sign or not." And I was just like, "Wait a minute." And so for me, I'm like, well, the sign is turned the other way, you know. But I'm like, you know what? Let me kill this with kindness. I said, "Well, I'm sorry, ma'am." And so this white lady and white man was just looking at me. And this lady just started pointing like that. And I'm like, dang, what this lady pointing at me like that for? She was like, I know you. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, you look familiar. And she said, you're Officer Golden. She said, you used to work off duty as a police officer at Rusk. And I'm like, yes, ma'am. I'm like, yeah. She said, I love you so much. She said, you were a true blessing to me. And her husband was sitting right there. And he's run up, just wrapped his arms around me. And was like, man, you're a good dude. Because you being there with my wife and sitting in her classroom, you have helped her a lot, and those students love and enjoy you. And so that white lady, that was the register lady, she was the one that's following me around the store the prior day. And so she looked at me and she was like, oh, so you're a teacher with her? Because she knew she was a teacher. I said, no, ma'am. So the teacher was like, no, he's a police officer. And she just looked at me and she was like, what? And I told her, I said, that's why you never should judge a book by its cover. I said, you don't judge me by the tattoos that you see. You don't judge me by what I look like. You judge me off my heart. Because typically, if you do that to someone, they'll probably snap on you. But I just killed you with kindness. And so that was a lesson that I had to show my kids that it doesn't matter what I do for a living. Like, at the end of the day, I'm still a black man. Like, I fear for my life just as well as any other black man in this community. And that's just, I mean, that's the honest God truth. So even when I go to work, when I'm not at work, those are the reality and some of the things that we have to face day in and day out. And like I said, I could write a book of how many times I had run-ins with the police now that I am the police. Like, all my run-ins is just not when I wasn't the police. It's now that I became the police. So that's just one of the stories that, you know, the community have to understand that we're human at the end of the day. Like, when we go on these calls, we deal with the same type of stuff when we throw that uniform off. Matter of fact, you can see me riding down the street. Sometimes I'm dealing with situations in my personal life before I go on a call. So you have to switch from father, you have to switch from mother, you have to switch from all these different roles with a level head, go into this situation, talk these people, shed light into their situation, and then you come back as an officer and you feel broken because you like, man, my life is still messed up. But I'm pushing these people to get through. I'm pushing them to get through. But in reality, we still fighting it. And then at the end of the day, as us being black men, there's still a target against us because of who we are. And that's why I tell people is that as a black man, you already have a target against you. So being in law enforcement, that's 2 strikes against you.
Right. That's already 2 strikes.
I just, you know, just like him, I could go, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been black even twice as long as I've been a police officer, right? So I can do this, you know, so I can go forever. You know, first of all, it's a frustration. Like, you know, I talk about at work sometime. People go, why are you trying to be so healthy nowadays? You know, why you're not eating meat and all that? I go, well, you know, I have a little thing. You know, high blood pressure runs in my family, so that's going to take a few years off my life. I'm a veteran, so they gave me all kind of shots. I've been all over the world. That's going to take a few years off my life. I'm a police officer. The stress of just doing that job, being a black man, you know, I'm about to probably die tomorrow because of all these different things that stress. And I mean by stress is people don't realize when I see someone on the news, I'm mad if it's a brother and I'm mad if it's a brother. Right. You know, I'm mad. Now this, my whole family, I have sons. I have 3 sons. I have one son that's driving age. He'd be out there right now getting pulled over. I've been pulled over many times. We didn't come from a lab. We weren't hatched in the egg. We were black men and still are black men. We get followed around the stores just like everybody else. Right. Sometimes I go, look, I probably have more money in my pocket than you do. You don't know what I do. Some stores I've even worked in off duty. But in saying that, I think I will say for the profession, America, and I know we have a question about this later, so I don't want to get on too much. Some of these issues are American racial issues. America has a racial problem. It's not always a police and community issue. And sometimes I think that this profession is getting served on a platter to solve America's racial issues. Because getting followed in the store don't have really anything to do with police in a community. It might have something to do with the skin.
Okay.
So that's what, I'm gonna just stop there. I know we got 10 questions. I'll flow on that, baby.
That was good.
But to a point though, we can't duck the fact that we do need to have that conversation in the justice system, right? And I'm not talking about just from policing. I'm talking about from the courts all the way to the Supreme Courts. Like we could change everything at a police level, but I still got to go see that judge, all right? And if the mandatory minimums is still, what they are, then I'm pretty much stuck by minimums, you know what I'm saying? So that's one thing. But I think what the situation that happened with the police, the killings, kind of ripped the Band-Aid off or something, right? And right now, even though you guys are being served up on the platter, it's really, you guys are just a billboard to everything else that's going on in that. And I hate that you guys are that, but the issue still at hand is to say, you guys are human, right? You guys are human. But you also called to a higher standard of being human because of the job that you chose, right? You know what I'm saying? So if a teacher smacks a kid for talking trash to him, she fired instantly. You know
well, actually, it's not always the case. And I will say this. The frustration that you feel is why I'm an officer.
Right.
See, some people think they did something because they sweating because they marched down the street. Me, I said, I'm about to go be part of the solution and take whatever I get from my family. I've been doing this almost 22 years and I still get family members. Why are you doing that job?
Well,
but I got cousins in prison for selling drugs. I got cousins that sell drugs. They don't get questioned at Thanksgiving.
But listen, give credit to
they
the
questioned
people
me.
That put their feet on the pavement that did march, because those people are the billboards and the noise makers.
But what I'm saying is, let's do more than just marching down the street.
This is the thing. You can't tell somebody that's angry, that's hurt, how to grieve. You know what I'm saying?
What I'm saying is,
wait,
let's put work in though.
But that is work.
But what I'm saying is, because this was a question about the police officer.
I get it.
So I'm saying is,
but I was out there, so let me tell you why it's work. Because it's hot as hell outside, right? And we marched for miles, right?
I was out there too, and more stuff than you.
Which is cool. But what I'm saying is, I did that because we needed to bring awareness to a politician that can make a move. We needed to bring awareness to a community, to a white community, so they can make a move. So everything because I did a lot of speaking down there. I even spoke at the city hall, right, when they had that big thing with the 5,000 people or whatever. And my statement is, your life has to be a protest. It can't just be you coming out here having a conversation, right? But these people's lives are the protest. When they get out there and they put their feet and their boots on the ground and get maced and get sprayed. Let me tell you why this is so critical.
I didn't never say don't protest.
No, I'm not saying
I
that.
want them to protest. I'm saying don't stop the protest.
I got you. But I just want to give quick validity to it. Because the reason why Martin Luther King, when Selma happened, didn't take that journey on that first rip was because it wasn't the time. But let me tell you why it wasn't the time. Because when they went back to take the next journey, when the popes and the rabbis and the whites and all of them were there, see, the issue is white America doesn't think that what's going on ain't really what's going on. They think that, it's just black people because they're criminals and they do all of this. That's why they're supposed to be getting locked up. But when you put white people in the front line and they getting smacked around and getting done just as well as blacks, their eyes wake up. So this is what I'm saying. The whole point is we can go the militant Malcolm X route and say, beat the body. But Martin Luther King's method was more violent than anybody because he attacked the conscience. And see, this is what...
I just want to finish with my point that I was making that you cut me off saying. Okay, what I was saying is, I agree that marching should be something, but don't stop and think you did something by marching. The next step is, that's what I'm trying to say is, the next step is look out in the community and see what you can do and be part of the solution. And my thing was, because believe it or not, racism was a problem when I started this. Racism was a problem before we all were born. So my thing was, after we protest, let's all look in the community and see where we can sacrifice and do the hard things. That's all I'm saying. I ain't never say nothing bad about the protest.
No, I'm just saying everybody
but
got
let's
a
not
job.
think we did something just as a people,
They did.
because I got the right to speak on a black man just like you, right?
I agree.
So let's not think we did something as a people
They did do something.
just because let's keep it going.
Everybody got a job to play. Everybody ain't gonna be on the
I'm
front
saying let's do
lines.
more than that, because
But-
marching ain't doing nothing but get exercise, let you do something with it.
But I'm like, but even with this, like, with this platform alone, I mean, it speaks volume. Like, me and Kyle, we went to school together, you know what I'm saying? We connected, you know what I'm saying, back on doing this, you know? You never knew you walked that life, you know what I'm saying? You never knew some of the things that I walked through and things like that. So, like, even from Herndon, even from what you saying, like, what we doing is actually protesting, you know what I'm saying, our beliefs, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's history being made right here to have blacks, you know what I'm saying, having police officers, having people from different walks of life, you know what I'm saying? Like, people frown on people that are felons, and like, all police officers shouldn't have no association or affiliation with these people, but guess what? This is how our community grows. So, you standing out there in 100-degree weather, protesting, everything like that, I commend you for that. You know what I'm saying? I commend anybody who stepped out there. But what we did as law enforcement officers, we said, you know what? I'm not going to go out there and protest and walk with these people like that. I'm going to go ahead and be a cop where, Kyle, you got my number. Hey, you got a situation, call me. You know what I'm saying? We could lock arms together. You know what I'm saying? We do things like right now where our voices is being heard. You know what I'm saying? So it's like with the organization that you started and everything like that, I don't have that passion. But what you doing, we lock arms together, and with this being taped, people can hear these voices. People can, you know, to see that we're trying. You know what I'm saying? Because anybody could be doing anything right now on this Sunday. You know what I'm saying? Evening.
Straight up.
But we chose to be here as a community to bring this back together. And so, like, my frustration with everything is just us turning against one another. You know what I'm saying? And for us as people, like, we can't continue to do that. You know what I'm saying?
We can't
like,
continue
that's
to do
why
that.
our homicide rate is so high, you know?
We can't continue to do that, you know, and I think the thing that's prevalent here in this conversation, the point that needs to be made, that we all are black men, except for Ms. Williams. So we're all looking from that window of being a black man.
Right.
Now we just have to understand the perspective.
Right.
You know, you may be on this floor, you may live on this floor, I may live on this floor. You know, we all live on different floors, but we're all looking at the same picture. We're all trying to figure it out from a different perspective. So yes, the marching is important. You need your soldiers out there putting in the groundwork, but you also need people in those meeting rooms when policies are created to interject and speak for the black community. So I think everybody plays a part in that. Go ahead.
Yes, and one of the things I just want to add, even in our panel, because we can be real, right?
Right, let's be real.
And so I think one of the things that we have to do is watch our passion and be more open to hear one another and be respectful of opinions. I had an opportunity to speak with Toriana before, and one of the things he mentioned is we have to take certain things out of our toolbox, because I feel like we're all coming to the table with a high level of passion. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing for us, but when we do stuff, we're passionate about it.
Right.
If we do it. But sometimes that passion can blindside us to only kind of what we think and what we view. So, you know, when you mentioned, so even if it's anger, frustration, whatever it is, when we come to the table, let's take out those toolbox that keep us from, take out those tools out of that toolbox that keeps us from really kind of connecting. I felt like I was feeling a lot of passion from Kyle and also Mr. Herndon. They both were saying great things. Nobody's right or nobody's wrong. You understand what I'm saying? It's a matter of opinion, honestly. But we still have to be open to receiving, because when we're so passion driven, you will automatically just kind of shut down to what you think. You know what I'm saying?
That's
and
a fact.
like, okay, wait a second.
Right.
We all are here to show our passion, but also to be mindful of others' opinions. You know, it's no right or it's no wrong.
I think you hit the
This
nail
is
right on the
This is
head.
one reason I wanted to have this discussion. I knew it was gonna be heated. I knew there was gonna be different views. And in some sense, I wanted to gain an understanding as a black police officer, how a normal black person viewed me myself. Because during the protests, I was down on the line. And because I was a black police officer, I was targeted. So people would come up to me and call me a sellout. They would call me Uncle Tom's. They would spit on me and things along those lines, merely because I was a black police officer. They didn't ask me my opinion on how I felt about, you know, George Floyd incident. They didn't ask me that. They merely saw the uniform, and I was immediately attacked. It was so bad that at the end of the night, my Caucasian counterparts came up to me to check on me, like, man, are you okay, man? Like, man, they really ripped into you, man. They really got into you. And there was something, out of all my years of police service, I've never felt so discouraged at that point in time. Not because of the protest or them throwing rocks at me, it was the words from people that look like me, that I risk my life every day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to protect.
Yeah.
Those words discouraged me. So that's why I wanted to have this discussion. I reached out to Kyle and said, hey man, these are the emotions that I'm feeling. I think we need to have this discussion. It's a very difficult topic. No one wants to have it, but I see a need to have it. We need to make this happen. And Kyle.
And here we are. And here we are.
We are.
That's really that's what the heartbeat of lyrics is, though, is having the complicated conversation, right? There's not always a right answer or a wrong answer. It's just making the effective choice.
And an understanding.
The
An understanding,
right?
Right, an understanding.
And I don't want to act as if we live in a world where there's not going to be contention, right? Because out of chaos, creation happens. Chaos in a beaker is something brand new, right? So, like, when Bird reached out to me, I thought it aligned with the program because, for real, everybody's taking a chance having this conversation.
Absolutely.
I was fired from my job because I protest. For some things that I said during the protest, like we all making sacrifices here. You know what I'm saying? To be here, and I first and foremost want to applaud you guys for even taking a chance to do that.
Absolutely.
By coming out, but in the same sentiment, one of the key components about what lyrics is talking about trauma. Right, we face trauma, and the issue where the contention happens is there's two traumas happening at the exact same time. Like, you guys are feeling this trauma, but what you got that day was somebody's trauma from way back here. You just got the outlash of it, because the reality is there isn't just white officers that have done some scary stuff when it comes to blacks, right?
There's some black ones too.
There's some black ones too, and I know men that have lost parents to police officers. You know what I'm saying? So not only are you getting that, you're getting it was just trauma. It's just grief. People were grieving and they lashed it out. I'm not justifying it.
Right.
Sometimes we just call it a fact is a fact. This is what happened. Right? And Martin Luther King said this. He said the riots are the voice of the unheard. Right? The marches are the voice of the unheard. The people that feel like, if I keep telling you please stop. You know what I'm saying? Eventually somebody that's just back a coward into a corner. He gonna shoot.
Eventually, he gonna not be a coward no more because you force his hand.
Exactly. So I think that's what played out at the protest. You know what I'm saying? And it's not justified, and this is why I really like this conversation also, is because now we get to hear what the other side of that trauma looks like.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because the world, the city, the nation is focusing on our trauma, which is real, you know what I'm saying, but not giving so much light to the trauma from, you know what I'm saying, that y'all experience. So
I think that's very important that you said that we speak to the traumas that they go through. Again, you're risking your life on a daily basis for people that look just like you, but may not, support you in what you do. So it has to be a level of trauma. So I kind of want to transition. You talked about it, Sergeant Herndon, about some of the things, systemic, right? So I pose this question to the panel, the community side. How has systemic oppression played a part in police brutality in our community?
Wow, that's a great question.
Well, give me a great answer.
How about this, just locally here, the way the police department is structured, the way it's set up is unparalleled in the United States of America, almost unique. This is one of the only police departments in America that's controlled by the state. And till we, as a community, get that under control and get the Kansas City Police Department back answering to the city council and the mayor, the people who provides their funding, you're going to continue to see this discord that you see in the community.
Could you kind of educate our audiences? How do we get the police departments back under the control of the citizens?
It's going to take an act from the state legislature, the Missouri, your lawmakers. So contact your lawmakers, but also the way it's set up, it's going to have to be a petition and get on the ballot. That starts from the community grassroots effort. That's a grassroots thing. Yeah.
I think just as you said it, I think he said it earlier, like the look is what is systematic itself. You know what I'm saying? Like he said, like even the sergeant said, I mean, I might have more money in my pocket than you do. I do things sometimes and go places like, what do you think I do? So it might be the car I drive, it might be the ring I bought that I bought from the jewelry store. I didn't buy, but it looks like, but I like that because I want you to systematically think, oh, you, like you said, they tell you sell drugs. I don't, I work every day and I own a shop for this long. And they be like, wow, but I could make it look like this. I'm comfortable like that, but I can do the other also. So I think the system, the way it's set up is, and it's sad to say, like how we come, period.
Right.
So I mean, I know the people with suits get treated the same way. Maybe the sweatsuits and the West Column put you in a different bracket, but I know people that's like, I go to the boardroom and get treated the same unequal because of the system.
Right.
And it don't matter if it's a Armani head and toe to, Bruno Mount shoes. It's still you a black man. So I think the system is set up for us to have to prove it.
Right, the system is set up like that, but I think it starts on a grassroots level, like the gentleman, Mr. Porter said, like getting things on a ballot and then exercising our right to vote. I think a lot of times we don't exercise, that's our voice. Mm-hmm. Of course, marching and protesting is, but that's all reactive, that's not proactive. Mm-hmm. Voting is proactive, where you can actually put people in a position that look like you or before you, right, to sit at that table and help with those policies being made. So to a certain extent, we as a community have dropped the ball on that because not all of us exercise that right. You know, when you look at the term voting, the political term for voting is the right to suffrage. When you don't exercise that right, you're really picking your poison to suffer. Right? How am I going to suffer? Am I going to suffer like a Republican? Or am I going to suffer like a Democrat? Am I going to suffer like a poor man or a rich man? But you're going to suffer when you don't exercise that right. So I think the first thing that we have to do is petition certain policies to be voted on. And we have to do our due diligence, not just on a national level, but on a local level, because the local voting affects us more than the national elections do. So that's my intake on that.
And go ahead.
Can I say, as you say that, I talk about that in my shop, but I think it's the type of deals where because it's not maybe the oldest person that feels like that. It's us training up the ones that are coming behind us to know the importance. Because when we cutting hair, I hear people say, oh man, I ain't voting, that ain't for me. Mm. But the people older than them say, man, go vote.
Right.
We need to go vote. But they don't, it hasn't passed down this line to where it's just as strong at the start of this line as it is at the end. Mm-hmm. So where he feels like voting is real, it starts to lose as it gets to the younger person that says, when I say younger, and I'm not even talking 16, but I see that their minds are not, like you said, groomed to say, I remember being younger, I couldn't wait to vote. I watch them now, 16, they on voting is like the furthest from their mind. But it was like, I want to vote, that's my right. That's all I was taught was the right to vote. Mm-hmm. But I watch them at 16 and and 16 they're getting ready to vote, or 50, they like, that's not what it is, but it's like the importance of what their vote means. And then once you tell me at 16, and we all 16, and we vote.
Right.
But if you the only one to know because he told you, it stops.
It
stops there because somebody told you. Momentum. Right, we got to build up that momentum so it's going. Go ahead.
Sergeant Herndon, I know you.
Yes, and I just want to say as far as systemic racism outside of the police department, but how it affects police brutality, it comes from a little ignorance, lack of education, lack of understanding culture, lack of understanding certain things about the society you are serving. But we let a lot of educators off the hook. I wish there was some educators, and if there's some out there, please speak up. For a while, I worked inside of a high school as a school resource officer. And before that, I have mother, brothers has been administrators in schools. And obviously I went to school myself. And I saw that we always focus on math, reading, and if we have time, science. But social studies and history, we hurry up and do it. We barely talk about it. And a lot of times we still teaching lies now when it comes to history. Mm-hmm. And then we have a workforce that we hire on either side, whatever race, and we expect them to serve each other equally when we all been taught lies about our history and history of others. So if an officer, because I worked in employment in my department for 7 years, I was the recruiter for some years, the test proctor. I sat in half of the interviews, and I know that if we had in our hiring process, in our training process, what the public wanted just in that realm as far as culture, the academy would be about 2 years long. Or we would have to hire people with degrees just in that field, and then we would start out much more than the government is willing to pay us. So then we look at the education system. Why are people graduating high school, let alone in the public schools, less than they should even start high school with? And that's what we should be outraged about. But when it comes to culture and history and understanding that, we're hiring from a pool of people, any race, that really are not prepared and understanding anything outside of maybe in their household or in their community. And then we expect to handle people in an emergency situation when you're thinking like that. And we must demand from our educators or our governments, just like if we're going to vote about how the police department is restructured, really get on the school thing to the point of whenever I hear these elections, I'm happy when I finally hear a politician kind of talk about education. Then we hardly talk about it again. They get let off the hook year after year. And a lot of the issues we have out here is because people are not prepared for today's workforce. So they have to turn to something else. That's one reason of crime. We're not on that now, but just on systemic racism as far as what kind of education system we're allowed to have in the inner cities.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I kind of just want to add to what I feel like at this table that we are all at, we really need to have a conversation too about just accountability as a community. When it comes to education, we have community centers that have been all over our community. There are plenty of opportunities for us to educate our own children, educate our own families, on different things. And that to me is just the first step. Is we have to recognize we have not stepped up to the table. We have lacked providing education to our own community. How do we have relationships between the officers and the community? We have to create that. Nobody's going to come into our community and create that. So, even when you and Kyle were talking, it made me think about, yes, protesting is one part of it. And then you were like, we got to take action after that. Right. So that's the next step. So if he's great at protesting, by George, do it. You know what I mean? If you're great at setting up the next step, so now we can talk about legislation and then putting that into the right place so that we can get some things changed. We all have, like you said, our areas, but it's like we have to come to the table and understand that we are here because we are here. We've decided to stay kind of right here.
We have to get fired up about the education. Like, I would like to see the next protest was going to be one about how the school's been letting us down.
Well, it comes back to a level of accountability as well, because when they're issues, they do have meetings at the school board that you can go down there and you can voice your opinion, and we don't show up. But let a Jordan release date happen, let an iPhone release date happen, we're there. So it's a priority thing and it's an accountability thing. When it comes out, yes, it is systemic. It is, but it has to be important to us to drive home like, hey, we see the lack of funding here at these schools. We see the difference in curriculums at the school. We're not going to stand for that anymore.
But we got to get off that wheel though, right? So since anything systemic, basically is saying it's on a hamster wheel, right? It's spinning and we just kind of just following it down. But see, what creates the wheel is policy, right? And there's an ethical policy that sometimes I think we fail to realize is we have higher ups making policy for people down here that live down here, all right? So the prime example, the first big policy that was put into place that kind of like shifted everything was the welfare, right? The welfare worked when the Great Depression happened, right? Got people jobs, got us out of it. It was like a stimulus boost. We use it, we shake it, we move, right? Well, because you made this policy for these people down here, you didn't know that these people will learn how to hustle it and turn it into a job, right? You don't know that because you created this policy for people that are down here. So I'm gonna give you another great example is when they did the crack disparity, the 100-to-1 crack disparity, right? 100-to-1 crack disparity put mandatory minimums. You can get caught with 5 grams of crack cocaine. You can get caught with 5 suitcases of cocaine, and they're equal. You see what I'm saying? So what happens is when policy is going into effect, they say, yo, we need to be tougher on crime, be tougher on crime. Well, tougher on crime is a dog whistle to that section of America to say lock up them, right?
Okay.
It's a dog whistle for them, right? So every time a politician gets up to the stand and says, I'm going to be tougher on crime, to those constituents, they hear we're going to lock them up,
Right.
So we're going to lock them up. We're going to lock them up. So every politician since the first Bush kept, if you follow the stem, they kept saying, I'm going to be tougher on crime. Well, they did that, right? And then we got all the way to Clinton, and now we got mandatory minimums that are sky high, that are locking us up at a higher rate, right?
Right.
So the thing is, if that wheel is turning and we think that that's right, we as people, we don't fix what ain't broken. You see what I'm saying? So now this shift in time is happening to where people are more conscious, and there are a lot of people getting off the wheel that can look at the wheel and say, that wheel ain't how it's supposed to be.
Right.
Now we're trying to do something about it, and it's starting to shake. So then we get an Eric Holder and we get an Obama that come in, and the reason I'm speaking to this is because I'm here because of Obama. Like I was facing 35 years on mandatory minimums based to the 100-to-1 crack ratio. Under Obama and Eric Holder, they dropped it to 18-to-1 that gave me a fighting chance to raise my kid. You see what I'm saying? So now you got a people that have been incarcerated for small amounts of crack, and then you want us to be fathers when we come home, but we ain't never been fathers, or our kids ain't never been fathers. Now I got a daughter that I'm trying to figure out how to have a relationship with based on 5 packages of crack cocaine compared to a suitcase, compared to the cartel, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
You see what I mean? So that's where that wheel spins. And the issue is when I sit in front of these people, you know, they're like, you shouldn't have sold dope. Right? In their mind, they're like, you have the capability. You can wake up, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, right? You can wake up in the morning, you can go get a job, but you don't really understand that we're in survival mode. We're not living. I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna make it to tomorrow. You're talking about how you're gonna live in the next 5 years. So yes, you can say the words every single day and they're on the same playing field, but we're like a great analogy a mentor gave me. He said, Kyle, you're coming to the starting line with your feet tied, your hands tied, and they're pulling the gun and they've already taken off, but you got to take this off first, and then get to going. Right? That's the systemic cycle that we're all in, and everybody's like, we need to do this, we need to do that. That's the issue. Crime and poverty decreases when we realize, like, yo, we don't have to be on this wheel no more. This wheel isn't true. It's not even existing. You know what I'm saying? Because if we affect the wheel, if we affect the thought process, then we create, and this is why I say your life is a protest. Because now that we have, think about it like this, you got kids that are growing up under Obama for 8 years. That's all they know is a black president. You can't help but to infect the next 15, 16 years of interracial relationships. You can't help it. That's all they know is black president. 8 years before that, right? They never seen anything close to a black man in that big of a political figure, right?
Right.
So now what we have is kids that are going to grow up being policymakers with the idea of a black president. That's the shift. That's where policy gets shamed. That's how the systemic cycle begins to crumble. You can't go to, we can ask them to do something all day, but bro, that's just taking off a Band-Aid. That's just a Band-Aid. We can talk about this stuff all day, but until we start changing the thought process of these young adults shifting into these policy positions and how they look at racism, how they look at race, how they look at black, white, male, female, unknown gender, whatever, you know what I'm saying? However they look at that, I'm telling you, that's where the shift comes from.
Okay, so
it just still starts with us.
it still starts with us. It starts with accountability.
I don't want to say it doesn't start at home. It starts at home.
So let's transition into the next question, right? And this one is gonna, this one's gonna get, real. We're gonna keep it real, like we said, right? So when black on black violence takes place in our communities, we as a culture often tend to support the no snitching propaganda and not cooperate with police investigations. However, when a black person is killed by a police officer, we protest, we march, and things of that nature. So it only looks like black lives only matter when we're killed by police officers. Now I want to talk with my officers first because you guys are out here behind the scenes on a daily basis. You have to live that. I know it's kind of hard to say Black Lives Matter, but like when you go into your community, you can see that sometimes it may not even matter to us. So like, how can we change that narrative? What are some of the things that you feel as an officer could kind of change that narrative? First, starting with the no snitching propaganda, because a lot of times you guys are our first level of defense to protect our community. So if we're not working with you, we can't protect our community. So how can we really change this notion, change this shift in thinking for these policies, as Kyle mentioned, to help better our community?
There has to be a buy-in by all of us in our community. If you don't value your community, then you don't value the quality of life everybody is serving or living, so you don't care if you do certain things to lower the quality of life of your own neighbors. And I'm not having anything to do with police, so if you have your music a certain volume, or if you outside doing certain things late at night at 2 in the morning, you're not thinking about, well, my neighbor might have to get up and go to work or go to school. So if we do things to empower young people and other people in our communities to feel part of it, it's not like we're visiting. That's why also as a veteran, I'm also a combat veteran from the United States Army, I feel like I hate when I hear that as my race gives up a little bit of our citizenship, saying like it's their country, I don't like this country, and this country is as much mine as it is anybody's. And it's as much ours, if not more, than anybody's. And if we get that buy-in and we put that into our children, they will feel like they're gonna protect this neighborhood and this city because it's theirs. Have some pride in their own neighborhood. A lot of times I go on calls and I'm like, y'all not mad? Why am I more mad this happened on your block than you?
Right, there you go.
I'm looking at my people, okay, I'm putting tape up. It just happened yesterday. 12 noon, 3 people got shot down the street. And people just like, well, why you got the street blocked? Mad at me. I'm like, what just happened? We got to get some buy-in to our own neighborhoods.
It speaks to accountability. Any other officers want to chime in on that?
I agree with like what Kyle was saying. You know, as a man thinketh, so is he. We have to change that mindset of our young people. We have to show them that there's other ways to make it in life besides resorting to criminal activity. The education system, yeah, we know there's a problem there, but we also need to look at other resources besides college. There's technical training, there's military, there's several other resources that a younger person can go to besides going to college. So we really have to focus on that mindset of that young person.
But before we move on to anybody else, I have to let Coach speak. He's been so quiet up there, just observing everything. And so he just tapped me. He's like he got something to say. So the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I know the source of all of what, one thing you recognize is that we can't have an understanding without the communication. And the communications allows us to have an affinity and that understanding of things we agree on. You know, we all agree on human rights. We all agree on that we all should be living. We all should, you know, and prospering. And then we have that reality of what is and is not, right? I'm not going to say just is, but what also is not. And we know that some of these things that we get exposed to are not right. We know in our conscience that something isn't right about it. But specifically addressing this is, you guys, like I said, the Way to Happiness book is here for a reason. You guys all have a copy.
Soft plug.
I mean, I did like that. Ain't that soft about that? But there's actually on number 12, it literally says safeguard and improve your environment. And it creates a state of mind. As you read it, you'll understand. When you start taking care of yourself, we start looking better, we get treated better. I got an example. I had my 3-piece on yesterday. I walked by some young kids. Do you know they moved out the way? They were like, ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, they was like trying to get out the way. But if I had come in my jeans and t-shirt, what you think they're gonna do? And you can walk around dust. You see? But that's because I was a different image. I was in a different environment. I created a different image for them so that they could respond to with some respect. And then the second level is the people around you. You clean up your yard, what happens? Your neighbor all of a sudden, you start cleaning up his yard, right? But if nobody does anything, nothing happens. And nothing is not the right answer. And you'll see based on everything you've heard so far, nothing has never been the right answer. Not voting is not the right answer. Not responding, not the right answer. Not taking care of your own neighborhood is not the right answer. But when we take that responsibility, all of a sudden it becomes the right answer.
Right.
And I feel good about it, but also the guy next to me is going to feel good about it, right? And we change our environment by doing the things that we knew. Like I said, cleaning up, making our neighborhood look better. I've heard some of you guys have heard me say this before. We should have a campaign on who has the nicest block in the core. Let's applaud that, because I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired of hearing about the bad. I want to hear about some good. Can I say that again? I'm tired of hearing about the bad. I want to hear about the good.
Right.
Y'all agree with that?
I definitely agree.
So I think we also have an issue where we're not recognizing and applauding ourselves. You know, we're not reaching out and saying, you know what? You good. Thank you for that. The newspaper, right? I'm starting a marketing campaign myself that says, wherever I go, I'm talking about it. I'm putting it on social media. How many restaurants y'all been to and y'all had a good time, but y'all didn't tell nobody about it? Right? But we should do that for each other. We should promote those businesses in the core. But all in all, we keep communicating, we keep sharing, we raise ourselves. It's going to raise the person next to us. And that's going to be that flow, and that's that contingent that we talk about of continuing. We're going to vote. I'm good.
I was just saying, just since we're here, I just give a little instruction, because part of our issue, our problem we have with relationships is our profession doesn't share enough or educate the public enough. And even though I was a school resource officer, and it wasn't that I didn't want to do classes in those classrooms, but a lot of those teachers and principals had problems with us that they carried from a young age, and they felt some kind of way let me talk to their kids as well. So it's not just that we don't always want to do it, but right here, since I'm here, I'm going to explain a little bit what happens when we do get a shooting call. We get a shooting call, we get to the scene, and a lot of folks that have seen something or haven't seen anything, and we understand it. Like I said, I'm from the south side of Chicago. 3 months out of the year, I was here. I always in Swope Park, always around here. But what I see is, I know, hey, go in the house, I'll call you on the phone if you don't want to be outside. I understand, I know what time it is. Somebody watching you that did it. I already know. I have friends that shot people. I know how it goes. But we can't allow this to happen if your kids are playing outside every day. Secondly, we only can go so far. We do reports, and we do reports, and we do reports. We bring witnesses downtown, or we talk to witnesses on the scene. But it's, even if we have a suspect and we get that evidence, it's hard to go to the next level, charging people and successfully prosecuting them if people are not helping. And then, for some reason, I get this, that it's hurting us, like the police. I told a couple of people this week, it is hurting me because I see my people doing this. But think about it. A lot of us don't live here. We live in Kansas City, but you hurting your block. You hurting your little kid. I literally had a lady saying, my daughter is trying to go to the bus stop. Is it safe enough for her to go to the bus stop? So you think you hurt me, but you hurting this little girl on your block that you should be fighting for. And that makes me mad. Look at, I'm done. That's kind of something that brings passion for me, man.
So I think that a lot of this is it's from the foundation of not having trust. When you trust somebody, it's much easier to talk to them. It's much easier to know that they have your best interest at heart. So we are lacking trust. To me, that's foundational. Like, when I grew up, my grandmother was on 46th and Mungal. We knew our police officers. In fact, we knew them by name. And maybe sometimes they were up at the school, but more often they were serving in the community. You know what I mean? So much so I remember being an adult, and I was zooming down Bannister Road, flying through a school zone, not paying attention, got pulled over. And even as, I just want to make a note, even as a woman of color, there is a certain level of nervousness that we even get by being black women being pulled over. So I just want to throw that out there, that we too feel that way. But when I got pulled over, the officer happened to be one of my school resource officers. He was like, Christina? And I was like, oh, embarrassed. Like, he pulled me over, but thank God he did, because of the relationship. Slow down, Christina. How you doing? Da-da-da. How's your brother doing? Okay. I'm going to give you a pass, but you need to slow down. But having that relationship afforded me an opportunity to skip having to go to court, skip having to get a ticket, and also being able to hear. He told me to slow down, so it made me more aware. You need to, like my daddy tell me, take your foot off the pedal and slow down. But it was the relationship, and the relationship only happens when you trust each other. So I think it's fair to say that in our community, we don't have trust, and sometimes that's inherent from how you're brought up. You're not even brought up to trust. You know what I mean? And so the older you become, trusting doesn't get easier.
Oh, we get it. Stop telling your kids that police officers gonna get you if you don't do what I say. and then we say no, we not. That's a parent. That's a parental thing.
Yeah.
So we start that out because remember we black as well. So we
Yeah.
came through the same families.
I'm
We
glad
know
you-
how it is. So people go, why you gonna put me out there like that?
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, baseball card kids. And
But I think that's even intentional to say there's another level of somebody holding you accountable.
They should be
Stop
afraid of you
playing.
more than me.
You
When I
try
got
to-
beat up by the police in
Right.
Chicago, everybody was like, you should sue, you should sue, you should tell. I was like, he didn't arrest me. Because if he did, then my mother would have to know. I'm more afraid of my mother than the police.
Man.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I'd rather take this beating from the police officer
Yeah.
and he didn't arrest me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's we got to remember that there's a level of survival that we're not. Sometimes we don't pay attention to, right? Like sometimes, so there's survival mode, there's poverty, then there's like that middle class area, and then like a lot of people like sometimes we feel because we kind of out of it a little bit. We not in poverty as much as we was when excuse me, you know, let me say for myself, for me, right? The reason that this group doesn't believe in the police officers is because somebody done kicked in their house and took their mama from them. Somebody done kicked in and took their daddy from them. You know what I'm saying? And they might not understand why this parent is missing or why they whatever, and grandma didn't have to raise them. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. So for me, you know, you get into this survival complex and you're stuck in it. You don't even know you're in it. I know more people that are stuck in survival mode that think they living than people that are in living mode that think they surviving. And I say that to say, I remember going to my first day at work. I've been hustling. I've been shot before. You know, I did all of this stuff. I'm finally trying to get my life together. My first day at work, I'm walking down the street. Police officers pull me over for walking in the street, right? My first day at work, I'm trying to do something right, and I go to jail for a warrant, like a seatbelt ticket or something. You know what I'm saying? He drives me to my aunt's house to make sure that I was telling. It was a black dude. It was a black dude and a white dude. Takes me to my aunt's house, tells him, you know what I'm saying, yo. He got a warrant. What's the warrant for? It's seatbelt something, whatever. Well, you know he got a job. Well, he got to go because we already made the call. Our hands are tied, right? So, like, if that's my, you know, that's my constant encounter. And then when I got shot, his little brother, you know, he went to jail for flagging the police down because they drove past me. You know what I'm saying? When I was laying on the ground, dying from a gaping wound in my chest. You know what I'm saying? So when you get into this survival mode. And you what you do is you desensitize to the violence, right? So you're coming, stringing up the tape, and you're like, man, I'm trying to get to the, what's the name? To you, it's like, because you're seeing the violence and you're seeing the blood, the gush, and all of that. To them, that's Tuesday.
Right.
That's Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? And to some of us, like, we gotta get to a point to where we realize, like, God loves us enough that we are woke to see this type of stuff because that's not the normal. We are anomalies to this conversation because there are people that literally. I got a homeboy right now. Like he like I don't stay in poverty. Like there's a vacant house here. There's vacant boarded up house here. Like he in his mind, like he doesn't see that. And a lot of people that they get to the best of poverty and then they look down on people in poverty like you like lower middle class. Like you don't really know where you at. And people, and this goes back to that starting line. People think that they way past the starting line. Mentally, anybody that literally cannot pay their rent and buys a Prada bill, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to get to that point. Right. And until you get past that, you'll never understand the condition of the people. You know what I'm saying? Like, it'll frustrate me. Like, you're not going to get frustrated at a mentally ill person for being mentally ill. But if you don't think that they mentally ill and they do something to you, you're going to be hot. You're going to be angry. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what's going on. We got to realize that people are in survival mode. Like people are struggling out here. People are struggling mentally out here.
Well, definitely, we had some points that segue into this next question. And I can't have everybody chime in on this, but I do need to hear maybe like one or two from each side. Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. With that being said, could the woman on the panel speak to the importance of having positive male role models in our communities?
Can I? Absolutely. And in fact, it just brings me to the point of why we're all sitting here today. You know, Tamala and I, which is co-owner of the Black Company, this time last year, we were sitting around as two women having a conversation on how heavy it felt to watch our men being kind of attacked in the way that they were from the George Floyd. I mean, it was shootings happening. It just seemed like I know it's a daily thing, but it seemed much heavier last year.
Right.
And we were having the conversation about how we just felt like our men had absolutely no safe place to go, a place where they could be respected, a place where they could even sit around and have conversations like this without being judged or not feeling like comfortable enough to talk about these things that really need to be talked about. So it's super important to have our men. I mean, we value our men. In fact, if we're looking from a biblical perspective, men were created to lead. Okay, so when we talk about whether it's in your household, it's in your community, it's in your workforce, whatever the case, God created men to lead. And so it's important for, our men to be around and to, take the lead and really kind of give us women, something to work towards with you. I think we've all heard the narrative. You give her a house, she'll make it a home. You give her groceries, she will make it a meal. So a lot of the women are just sitting around waiting for our men to take action. You understand what I'm saying? And so we can't do it by ourselves. And in fact, we don't even want to do it by ourselves. We need our men to stand all the way up. And here's the other part to it. We actually have your back. If you've got the vision, we coming with it. If all of the men on the panel today said this is what we want to do, the women are just ready and waiting.
Does that take away from your power as a black woman because of the leadership?
Oh, absolutely, because a real woman understands her role. Like, I feel like a real woman is clear about who she is. And in fact, she's seeking for that male presence, be it my father, be it my brother, be it my uncle, even my son. I'm looking for you to take some type of leadership to let me know which way I'm going. If I have to keep figuring it out, that's a problem. So when we talk about, why is our community the way that it is, it's because we don't have our men leading out, and you're leaving it to the women to figure it out. And God did not innately create us to be leaders. He just did not. He created us to be helpmates. And so a lot of us are forced into this position to keep leading and leading. You're trying to lead your children. You're trying to lead your household. You're working 2 or 3 jobs. You're trying to provide. You're doing everything that God created the male to do. And it just throws off the entire cycle. You know what I'm saying? It's just no, a real woman is not conflicted, in herself about a man leading her. In fact, she desires that. We want to, I ain't interested in changing no tires, taking out no trash. And I'm going to tell you something else. I'm not interested in paying no bills. I don't want to think about none of that. I want to manage my household. I want to love the mate that God gave me. I want to cover my children. And I also want to make an impact in my community in the way that he gave me that to do. You understand what I'm saying? There's enough for us to do. We're designed to help. That's it. That's all.
It's gonna be hard to come. Let me take a chance. Nah, but it's funny that question came up because right before I got here, I had a conversation with one of my boys. I stopped in the '60s, and they was just talking about family dialogues. Like, he's a newly father, 2 weeks, and he said something hit him. He said him and his girlfriend had got papers in the mail for welfare, government assistance, and he was like, man, that just messed up, man, how, they set men up for failure and this and that. And they said, I said, well, how's that setting you up for failure, bro? I said, that should set you up to be a bigger and better man. Because what the system is telling you is that there's so many no good men out here, and just in case you don't take care of your responsibility, she already got the paperwork here to assist her. So I said, for me, you should take offense to that and use that as greatness. And like she said, there's so many men out here who's really not men, who don't even think like a man.
Big facts.
Like, they think with the head down below instead of head up here. And so at the end of the day, I'm like, you make kids, but you don't take care of your kids.
Come on.
You build, you don't even build a woman up. You tear her down. But then you get mad when you see a black woman go over to the other side and talk to a white man. Or you see, you get mad when you see a brother go over to a white woman. What are you doing to help? Like, the calls that we go on, I see that all the time, where a dude sitting up there playing video games all day, where she hold down 3 jobs. I'm like, and for me as a man, I'm like, why are you with him? Like, I'll be honest, I got brothers that's no good.
Yeah.
And I ain't, and to be honest with you, I'm real. I'm the youngest on both sides of my family, and I'm real. Like some of my brothers on my daddy's side, I'll be honest with you, they're not men, and I tell them that to their face. Because at the end of the day, it's like I meet my nieces and nephews going on calls. But you get mad because you never met my sons before. Why? Be a father to your children. My sons don't need a no good uncle. You need to be a father to your children. But until men start understanding who they are as people, who you are as a man, I gave an illustration on my Facebook page a couple of weeks ago, and it was about the Wizard of Oz. When I watched the movie, my kids like, let's watch the Wizard of Oz. But it taught me a valuable lesson when I watched it. I said, Dorothy, she was a woman on that road. She got sidetracked, trying to get back home. So she got sidetracked, trying to make her way back to Kansas. But guess who she met along the way? 3 men. Each of these 3 men needed something because they didn't have it in them. But at the same time, why did it take her to instill this into those men? When they met her, they should have already had that. You should have had a heart. You should have had a brain. You should have had courage. Those 3 things is not what a woman can give you. That's something that's already in you as a man. But guess what? When you find that woman, she gets those things. You get those things back to her. So you look for so much in a woman when you was created first, brother. So and like I tell people, a woman is a helpmate. Yes, man, that's like extra credit. You know what I'm saying? When God made a woman, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, just imagine you sitting in this world with nothing but dudes. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like, having a woman, bro, like, having a woman is the most beautiful thing. And I had to realize that. Like, I was married once upon a time. There was failures in my marriage and things that I've done wrong. And I can speak of that stuff publicly because at the same time, it could be a man out here hurting or don't know the way.
Right.
But, and that's why I tell people, I'm a police officer, but at the end of the day, I'm human. Marital problems, child support problems, kid problems, the whole 9 yards. But guess what? Every day I wake up, I still pick myself up to keep pushing. So at the end of the day, men just have to step up and be men. You cannot allow a woman to lead because a woman is not designed. She wants to be catered to. She wants to be loved. You know what I'm saying? But you got to love yourself and know who you are first before you can love anybody. And that type of mentality is what carries on in the community. That no snitch thing, it carries on because guess what? That's what you're brought up on. Like you brought up not to respect a woman. I see dudes right now that cuss their mama out. I see dudes right now cuss their grandma out. You know what I'm saying? I see but man, it kills me when I open up a door for a woman, she think I'm trying to holler at her. No, I'm opening up the door for you because that's a respect thing. You go, I follow you. I'm your protector. You walk first. If something happens, I'm behind you. I got your back just as well as you got mine. But it just kills me because even going on these calls, I look at these women and they be like, man, I got a no good dude. And I said, no, the problem is you because you picked him.
I was going to speak to that. I was going to say, wait a second. We can't say that all the men that are on child support, the woman has to also look at herself. And it goes back to the wheel you talked about. We all on this wheel.
Right.
That's right.
We're used to our fathers not being present.
Right.
We're used to accepting different behaviors. You know you shouldn't lay down and have a kid with him. He's already got 10. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know he hasn't been working or has ever had a job, so it's more than likely he can't support you financially. You know, so it's also that vicious cycle, but it goes back to our community. These are things that we need to address in our community. You know, no, we can't be mad at the welfare system. I mean, you're using their services, right? They got to go after somebody to get it back, and who do you think they're going after? The non-custodial parent, which happens to mostly be the male. Not saying that the men are not present, but typically the children are with the mother. You know what I'm saying? So it's a vicious cycle. We have to change the cycle. But I'm just speaking from, you know, a woman, you know, that we don't enjoy doing the responsibilities of men. We don't enjoy them, and then also it's so out of position. You're trying to figure out how do you be soft, how do I be pleasant, how do I speak of love when I'm so hard. I've been carrying the weight of my entire family. You know what I'm saying? And I'm talking about too. I'm speaking about the men above you, because sometimes it's the older ones. You're like, wait a second, what's going on? Who's going to protect me? I'm not feeling protected at all. You know what I mean? Completely vulnerable. And so I think a lot of the slashback and the feedback and maybe even some of the smart talk is just, it's an overabundance of just kind of being tired. And again, this is not an American issue. This is our community's issue.
Accountability issue. So I got about 2 more questions left, but one is a solution-based question, which we talked about. So my last question, many people have called for defunding the police department as an effort to end police brutality. Could any of the officers on the panel speak to the pros and cons of this idea?
I think we all can, but I'll take a stab at it first, especially since I worked in HR for a while, but I've been an officer for a while as well. A lot of these changes that we try to make, first of all, I'd like to say, my department has done training, cultural training as opposed to like what's racial profiling. I even taught that class for a while so we can understand for people who didn't know what it looked like, what it was, what it wasn't, how do we record the stops and all that kind of stuff. We did that way before these recent things, before Ferguson, before all that. Everything is what's not a knee-jerk reaction. But right now we're where we're trying to get more community policing back. The public is saying we need more situations like this to where people can get to know the public, to build that trust, to build those relationships. So that's going to take certain officers that have time set aside that are not answering calls, because a half an hour before I came in here, I was out there answering calls and we were short. We're short every day. And we don't have time to talk about it, but people are down 911 for things that used to be that the family would solve or men in that community would solve. So if a police department has to cut money, the first thing often is going to be cut are those people not answering calls with those extra officers. And that's sad because those are the community ones we need in the schools. We need in meetings like this. We need those extra officers, the CIT officers that are trained, and all of us are, but we're trying to train every officer on the department, but we have a special unit just that are trained to deal with emotionally disturbed people. Those extra programs that people want to see, those are a lot of times the things that are going to be cut. Or when you hear, man, I called y'all and it took an hour to get there. Well, I take pride in getting there fast, but when it's 10 calls waiting for me because someone called because their neighbor cut their part of the grass a little bit, or they parked in their parking space, and I have to go address that. Well, when a robbery happened down the street, I'm not available. And people use us to be their father or to be their mother when they don't want to tell their kids not to do something, and then we're not available because there's only so many police officers. So when they cut the budget and we hire less, then that's less officers on the street, so it takes us longer to get there. Those simple things need to be explained, so beware what you ask for, just in that term, because money, we decide how many officers we're going to hire by part of that budget, and also those extra units that can really serve our community, officers like us that have time to not answer a call but really make those relationships. That's kind of stuff that's going to be, and if it's not cut, like when I was a recruiter, 2 of those slots got cut while I was a recruiter. I ended up being the recruiter. At the time, right after Ferguson, when the whole world is saying we need more people that look like us. I mean, I only can be so many places, and I'm the same person testing everybody, processing and stuff, going to colleges, going to military bases, going to churches, going to community meetings, answering phones, answering emails, hundreds of emails. But they're going to say, well, he's not answering calls. We can cut that position, So we got to think about what it really means when we say defund. And is it a punitive thing to really say, oh, we're going to do something to the police? Remember, we really are serving you. I risk my life. I take pride in saying, if nothing else, I didn't get a chance to live in an African tribe and really be a warrior and go through that process to become and stand it up. So I feel like I'm putting my life on the line for my people every day. I take pride in that. I'm serving you. And so when you cut those funds that are available to help you, I hate that. It's something that we really need to serve you. So, I mean, that's what I really want to say on that I think it's more of those social workers. People say, well, we're going to cut the funds a little bit because the social workers can handle most of those calls. So to us, a emotionally disturbed party starts out, it may be a guy in the middle of the street literally with a machete. Before I did this job, I worked for probation for a while, and that's when I was still in college before I worked for the Boys and Girls Clubs. And it was a lot of times I'm like, man, I'm in this house, this person's on house arrest, the whole family looking at me crazy. Man, I kind of wish I was a police officer and had a little something more on me, So they're gonna call us to protect them while they go check on that person anyway when they're doing their social work. And let me tell you something else. It's some people that talk about it and some people that do it. All of us probably have thousands of emotionally disturbed calls between us. We do this every day, all day. I would say we're also social workers. And we're handling the person when they're in a crisis, when they're in emergency mode, when they haven't been on their meds and the family knew that they were self-medicating. Now it's a crisis and they want us to handle it in the right way every time when we allowed them to do some of these other things and sometimes we didn't. So we said a social worker, okay, go ahead and deal with that. No, can y'all come with us? In Kansas, well, in this city, almost every EMS call, the fire department don't go without us. If you're having a heart attack, if you're having a stroke, if you're having some kind of emergency call, they're gonna say, can y'all make sure the scene is safe first? So those are calls we go on as well. So I'm just saying.
And I'm gonna add on real quick and be short. Like when they speak about defunding the police department and everything like that, I think of it in a whole different manner too. Is they pushing a one world government? Like that's pretty much what they pushing because of the fact of just think the things that happen at the Capitol. You know what I'm saying? Like I never thought in a million years that I would actually see people actually break into the Capitol like that. Like and something like that happen. But just think the power of the government that say stand down and allow this to happen. So just imagine if you defund the police department here, where you're answering to the White House now, where they say, you know what, kill all those people. Guess what? Now you're gonna have more George Floyd situations. And it ain't nothing you could do about that. So why I tell people, and I was telling my mother this, why we have laws, let's hold people accountable to those laws. Because one day as time goes, and we know that this world is not gonna be around forever, pretty soon we're not gonna have no laws. It's gonna be the Wild Wild West. It's gonna go back to those times. And for people here and that's listening, do your research and think about where police actually came from. It came from the 1700s. The police was only started just to hold the runaway slaves accountable. So when they would run away, they would kill them or they would bring them back and hold them as prisoners and they would torture them. We didn't get a modern day police department until the 1900s. So that's the thing, like you have to do your research. That's why the cycle of this continue to happen because you got to think some of these officers' families were back then, you know, so it's just a cycle that keep going and it's gonna keep going. But if we defund police departments, guess what? You're gonna feel I think back to the protest. When I seen military pull up to that BP gas station right across from Central High School, I was like, what in the world? You know, that's the neighborhood I grew up in. So me, when I saw that, they were just posted up right there. Like me, that's frightening.
Yeah.
That's frightening. To see military driving up and down the street, to see an army tank driving up and down the street. That's not the life that I want for myself or my children. Because guess what? They are held to a different standard than with us.
That's right.
There's no accountability with them. If they say take them out, that's what they mean, take them out. And guess what? There's no repercussion of that. But with local officers, we're being held accountable by this gentleman right here, by this whole panel. You know what I'm saying? Even from the prosecutor standpoint of Jackson County, of her taking a stand on holding officers accountable. You know what? I feel comfortable with that. Some officers don't feel. I can speak on it, and I don't care. The whole world can hear me say that. I feel comfortable with her doing it, because you know why? My kids are going to grow up to that. I still have brothers out here. I still have cousins out here. And I tell people, you wouldn't worry about what is going on if you wasn't doing nothing bad.
That's right. I mean, first and foremost, I think this was a very, not just entertaining conversation, but informative conversation from both aspects. It was definitely to hear from the law enforcement, not just from the law side, but from the personal side. And then it's great to hear the concerns from the community. But like I spoke with you all back there before we prayed, I said, we're going to end this being solution-based. Too many times we have these type of meetings, we have these type of gatherings, and all we focus on is the problem, and we don't leave with the solution. So before we leave today, what are some things that we can propose that we can hold ourselves accountable to that will allow police officers to ingratiate themselves in the community and allow the community to ingratiate themselves with the police departments in a better effort to serve our community? So what are some of the ideas or solutions that we can propose so by the end of the summer we can all say, hey, you know what? That panel discussion just wasn't a discussion. Look what we created, and look at the momentum that we're creating in our communities to help change the trajectory of our communities.
For sure.
Go ahead.
Listen, after that, I'm like,
I know you're gonna go for a few minutes, so let me just say that. Okay?
Go ahead.
So I definitely think that the conversation needs to continue, and I don't know if that's an environment that's more like a town hall kind of vibe, where maybe it is the police and the community, something where they feel welcome. People just need to feel the level of trust. We have to begin to kind of usher in every platform we can, where we can build trust. This is not gonna happen overnight. But the conversations allow for the communication allows for us to create a plan, the plan allows for us to create a solution.
There we go. I like that.
That's what I was gonna say.
so there's a big difference between sympathy and empathy, right?
Right.
Sympathy is me feeling bad for somebody. Empathy is me trying to understand the next person. And solutions, long-term systemic solutions, long-term change happens when empathy happens, right? So we have these conversations because we want to understand the other side, right? We want to picture ourselves in those people's shoes and say, you know what, I get it. Maybe next time I could do something different, right? You know, we have our contentious ideas, right? It is what it is, but it doesn't stop us from working together, right?
Absolutely.
Me and Bird, when I came home, Bird supported me 110% and you know, building the Lyrics Institution. I mean, from grant writers and all of that. So what happened with me was when I was incarcerated, I had a paradigm shift to where I saw the game played from a different angle. I ended up having empathy for it, right? So when I came home, I knew I couldn't do what I was doing, what I wanted to do without the law enforcement, without policy. It's impossible to do social change, like the brother said. Like, there's no way that you can have the police, the social workers come out without law enforcement. It's impossible. And a lot of that, and I'm gonna be brief on this subject, but a lot of that comes from lack of understanding, right? Because a lot of people think that defunding the police was actually taking your whole budget away. There were some people that thought that, right? But anybody that ever thought that ain't never been to a federal penitentiary, right? They ain't never seen criminality, like, in real life, you know what I'm saying? So that's impossible. But because of that lack of understanding, because of that conversation that being able to be had, right? But the issue that we sometimes often have is set up like this to have a conversation. It's reactionary, right? There's a problem, something happened, and now we need to have this all of a sudden, this Band-Aid needs to be put on this solution. So one of the things that we were kind of thinking about was having a community engagement event that doesn't take a crisis to happen, right? We propose like doing like flag footballs and basketball games and things like that. And one of the brothers said this, and you know, in the pre-discussion was like, this ain't about optics. This ain't about a bunch of people taking a bunch of pictures saying these two people are together or nothing like that. But one thing that's serious about like with the Lyrics program is we create space for conflict to happen, right? So in the conflict is where wisdom and knowledge is tested to become wisdom, right? I allow you to go through struggles to perfect the information that I gave you so you can walk it out. So what we want to do is we want to create an environment. I don't know what that looks like here, but like let's create an environment to where like that authenticity can happen.
Right.
Yo, I'm on your team. Like, say hypothetically we were put 5-on-5, and it's a series of 3-and-2 and 3-and-2, community officers. There has to be a dialogue. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There has to be a conversation, and a person to be like, "Hey man," because I work with teenagers, and they'll come to me and be like, "Hey, so how did you even do that? How did you get here though? Like tell me about that." And it's authentic. You know what I mean? And one thing that me and Coach was even talking about was when you have conversations with young adults, and that facial expression change, when that eureka moment happens, they got it. Like
Right.
they're taking it with them forever.
Wow.
And I think creating spaces like that to where you're not standing over there where they're in a classroom or people are just sitting in an upright place. Like, nah, we just hanging out, kicking it, and we got to create those environments so empathy can happen, so that engagement can happen. Because I think that right there in itself, with the budget that's going on, it's kind of impossible for some of the things that people ask for, right? But in bringing us together to have those conversations in a friendly environment, I think that's one of the things.
Officer Bird, we're gonna end it with you. What do you propose as a solution to help us work together?
Going forward from this day, I really, in my role as a police officer, it's my position, the position that I'm in now, to create community events and things along those lines. So going forward, I'm gonna have more community events. Like Hal said, I support him in his events. I just ask that you all support us in ours. I think when the community sees us working together, talking, things along those lines, then it would jog some within themselves to say, if I see that black person talking to a police officer, then maybe I can do the same thing as well. You know what I'm saying? So just in pulling those people out, yes, it's a basketball game or it's some drinks and hot dogs and hamburgers and things along those lines. But the big picture behind that is to get us to start interacting and talking and discussing some of these difficult situations. Some people don't even know a police officer unless they're pulled on the side of the road, you know, on a traffic stop, or they find themselves having that officer respond to their house in regards to a 911 call or something along those lines. So the whole mindset behind our community events is to get the community more engaged with us. As a police department, we are really trying to engage the community here because 176 homicides in our city last year is unacceptable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank the Lyrics Institute, the Kansas City Police Department, and the Black Company for tasking Exactly My Point to facilitate this necessary conversation. Huh? And 5XL as well. I appreciate that. It's definitely been a humbling experience, but I'm excited for the work that not you guys are going to do, but the work that I'm going to be doing with you guys. So please include me in all your community endeavors. You know, it's not just about sitting in front of the camera, but, you know, really getting out there with my people and servicing my people. So again, we want to thank our audience here present and on the internet. Man, we really appreciate you guys. You know, listen, it's your boy Black Zach, the Exactly My Point podcast. I was in the kitchen cooking a little bit, and I brought some of my people in here with me to help me finish this dish. So again, man, we thank you for this conversation. Hopefully you were able to take something away from it and apply it not just to your community, but to your everyday life. So like I always say, man, love your people, stay solid, and never fold, man. It's Exactly My Point podcast. Peace.